This is Booking It to Financial Freedom, show number 3.
What he did that was really genius is that he became the bank for the buyer that he was selling the house to.
The brilliant thing that he did here is he borrowed the money that he initially invested in that property, an extra $19,000 coming in every year by doing basically nothing.
Right. And he only probably knew about that 1031 because of the education the self-education that he had done to understand the tax law.
There's so many different creative ways out there that you can leverage money to make more money. You have to be able to fail to grow.
Welcome to Booking It to Financial Freedom, where we explore literature from some of the most successful experts in their field to help you build a blueprint for personal growth and financial freedom. Join us as we examine a new book every month and break down key concepts to help you get out of the rat race and on track to start building a life better than you ever imagined.
Hey everyone, I'm your host, Amanda Schneider, realtor and investor, and I'm here with my co-host and teammate, Jamie Booth. Hey, Jamie.
Hey, Amanda, how's it going? Great to be here filming episode number 3. How was your week?
It was great, actually. Lindsay and I spent the day yesterday with kind of a mentor of ours. We had actually met him at a real estate meetup. He is a real estate lawyer and investor, and he does a lot. Most of his portfolio is in Canyon City, which is about an hour from here. Never a town I would have thought about investing in, but it does have a lot of tourism, and it has a large prison there. And he was kind of telling us about there's actually quite a bit of a housing shortage there. But he really started his portfolio there. So he took us around the whole town, kind of showed us some deals that, potentially we could get into, things that he thinks are good deals. And then he's actually working on a development process there where he's going to provide probably 100 or so new homes to the area, as well as revitalize the golf course that's there. So it was just a really amazing day to spend time with somebody that's at the point that Lindsay and I want to be.
Wow, that sounds really amazing.
Yeah.
What do you think your biggest takeaway from that day was, though?
Yeah, I would probably say it's, getting outside of your comfort zone. This individual he did 20 years in the military, and then after that decided to take the bar exam and became a real estate lawyer, learned everything he could about real estate, investing, tax law, everything that kind of has to do with real estate. And a lot of that, he didn't know before he started any of this journey, and he just continued to push himself outside of his comfort zone to learn more and more. And now he's developing 100 homes for a small community. So,
yeah, it's really awesome talking about comfort zone. Robert Kiyosaki talks a lot about that in this chapter that we're about to review.
Yeah.
One of the things about comfort zone, right? We like to be in our comfort zone. People dwell there, right? That's where that's our happy place because, there's no pain, there's no outside factors that are really taking us, anywhere.
Absolutely.
So to grow both personally and financially, you have to force yourself to get outside your comfort zone. Because when you do, you learn more about yourself. It forces you to think outside the box. It forces you to be creative. And then it helps also grow self-confidence, right? As you start to learn more and your toolbox gets bigger and fuller with all of the things that you start learning, it really boosts your self-confidence. You have to think about personal growth, the demands that it forces you to get better every day. It's like going to the gym, right? You have to challenge yourself. If you don't go to the gym and you do the hard work, you're not going to get stronger. Same thing with your personal growth. You have to force yourself to do uncomfortable things.
Right.
And then you grow as a person.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, as I listen to you talk about that, one of the most uncomfortable things I ever did in my life was joining the military. I'm from a small town in Nebraska. I'm kind of an introvert. The idea of leaving my family and everyone I knew, and especially going to basic training, that was so scary. But I think about all of the things that I learned, leadership, probably number one, but also just the mental fortitude to get through, basic training and then even deploying and that kind of stuff. That was certainly life-changing. And I think without that, I would probably still be living in small town Nebraska, never even interested in trying to grow mentally or, my financial freedom. So
yeah, absolutely. That's one of the things that I think we all experience in the military, you are definitely forced out of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
And you have to grow or you're going to fail.
Yeah. And a lot of times I think back to that when I'm facing something hard here, even if I'm just on a run and I don't want to run anymore, I think about the times that in basic training, I had no choice. Like you had to keep going. And if I could do it then, why can't I do it now? I did it once before.
Oh, so yeah. I remember one of my earliest experience at Fort Benning when I was there. I have to consider myself to be extremely fit. I played football, for 6 years, all that good stuff. And then when we first had to do like a 4-mile ruck march, I thought that was like impossible.
Right.
I was like, that seems like it's just at the time it seemed like a million miles.
Yeah.
Absolutely nothing these days. But you just like your mental capacity grows for, all the hard things that you do.
Absolutely. Yeah, well, I guess that kind of leads us into the meat of what we want to talk about today. We already talked in chapters 3 and 4 about minding your business and why the rich pay lower taxes. But this week we're going to talk about the importance of working to learn, not working for money, and then also how the rich invent money.
How the rich invent money.
Yes, and invest. They also invest.
They also invest as well.
Yeah. So the rich invent money, that is, I think, the title of chapter number 5. But basically, he talks about how, and we've already talked how you need to increase your financial IQ, but by doing that, it allows you to see the future of change through a lens of excitement rather than dread, which I think a lot of us do. Change is really hard for us, but when we understand that it actually opens up a lot of possibilities for us, it's something that can actually be exciting for us, and then you're able to see opportunities and actually act upon them. So you're training your brain to see those opportunities and to be excited about change.
As you grow your financial IQ, we don't necessarily want to take risks that, compromise us. We want to make educated, risks, and by clinging on to old ideas, it really stifles your ability to grow, right?
Yes.
It's kind of like, back in the day, people will tell you, work hard, save your money, put all your savings in a savings account. And back in those days, savings account actually gave you like a 5% interest rate.
Sure.
Right?
Better than the stock market sometimes.
So that was sound advice back then. But now interest rates for savings account is almost nil. And with the high inflation rates that we have now, you're literally just losing money by trying to save it by only putting it in a savings account.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And one of the things he really talks about is that money is not your greatest asset. It truly is your mind, and that you need to train it well. You can never grow your asset column unless you grow your mind and expand it to some of those opportunities. Yeah,
he talks about having money doesn't necessarily set you up for success. There's a lot of people who have a lot of money who don't necessarily attain success in different manners. He talks about the psychology of it. So if you're the people who are educated, not everybody, you don't have to be educated, but highly educated with money still doesn't mean that you're going to attain that success, right? It's a mentality thing. He talks about having, swagger, to be bold, all that stuff. So a lot of it, you can have all those tools, but if you don't have the right mindset to utilize it, it's not going to work out for you.
Exactly. Have you ever played the cash flow game that Robert invented?
No, he talks about it. I know he's getting himself a self-plug there.
Yeah,
but,
for sure.
I haven't actually played that.
We haven't either, but I think it could, and it's actually online now, so you don't have to buy the actual board game. But for those of you who have never heard of it, it is a board game that he invented to kind of help you understand liabilities, assets, balance sheet. And so it gives you some practice before jumping into actually buying assets, et cetera, and gives you a way to think about, your cash flow.
Yeah. And I think he talks about like there's opportunity cards and whatnot. So it kind of trains you what to do when you have an opportunity, or to be able to actually recognize that you have an opportunity that you can take advantage of.
Yeah. He talks about some people get really frustrated playing it. So it would be interesting for us to play it to see what our opinion is. But
yeah, it would be.
Yeah. But he gives 2 really good examples in this chapter that we wanted to talk through about how he, quote unquote, invents money. So obviously, Robert is big into real estate, so both of these examples have to do with real estate. But when he first got started, he said, it was a pretty low market at that time, but he was able to find a house that was worth $70,000, but he was able to buy it for $20,000. So he got a loan for $20,000. He only had to put down 10%. He borrowed the 10% that he needed to put down. And then what he did was turned around and was able to sell the house for $60,000. So bought it for 20, was able to sell it for 60. But what he did that was really genius is that he became the bank for the buyer that he was selling the house to. So rather than just, getting the $40,000 that he made, and that was the end of the deal, he actually became their bank. And he charged, I think it was 10% interest, he said. So in addition to getting that $40,000 equity, he was also getting $4,000 a year on interest. And he did that for several years until, he went ahead and sold the property.
Yeah, so. And I think the brilliant point to take away from here, and I think we touched on this in the last episode, is you don't need $1 million to get started. Mm-hmm. The brilliant thing that he did here is he borrowed the money that he initially invested in that property, and then he basically, made money out of nothing. He created the money.
Exactly. I think he says he spent a total of 5 hours on this deal. And, this was something, I'm not sure, he didn't say how long he owned it for, but he got $4,000 every year in just the interest. And then once they actually fulfilled the note and paid it off, he had that $40,000 of equity. And I think he said he did this, 8 or 9 times and made a really good profit. I think he was up to $19,000 a year that he was making in interest. And this was probably in the early 80s. And he said he was using that money then to pay for his car, gas, travel, dinners with clients, all expenses that he could write off in his business before paying taxes. So.
Yeah. And that's passive. That's the power of passive income flow. And can you imagine? I don't think the average person who's not into real estate can sit there and think about how beneficial an extra $19,000 coming in every year by doing basically nothing.
Right.
After you get it all set up.
Right.
That's the power of the passive.
Well, and what was great with this is that he did actually, sell the house to the buyers. It wasn't renting. So it was actually their house. So if a toilet needed to be fixed, anything went wrong, it was their house. He was just the bank. So truly passive for him. If you were a W-2 employee, you would have to really work a lot of extra time or maybe get a bonus or a raise to make an extra $19,000. Like, how many hours would that equate to you having to work?
Absolutely. So. Yeah, absolutely. And that's the normal way of looking at, how do I accumulate another extra $19,000 over time, second job, all that stuff. And that's not fun. No,
that's not fun. So that one kind of just shows you, again, the power of passive income, but looking at things creatively and making money out of nothing, because as you said, he didn't have that money. But the second example is he said he purchased a house for $45,000, which at the time he wasn't able to barely cover, I think, the note he had on it with the rent he was getting. But he wasn't in a hurry, and he held that house, and then he sold it for $95,000 a year later. He used that $95,000 and he 1031'd that money, which we talked about last week, which is basically just taking the profit you make from one investment and turning it into another so that it defers your tax liability. So he took that and turned it into a 12 unit. That was $300,000. A few years later, sold it for $870,000 and then turned that into a 30 unit, which he then eventually sold for $1.2 million. So I know that's a lot of numbers, but basically, just having, I don't know if he had $45,000 or he took a loan for it. Either way, it doesn't matter, but he eventually turned it into $1.2 million.
Yeah.
So.
From a $45,000 property all the way to $1.2 million. That's how you play the game of Monopoly, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's the power of the 1031 exchange if you utilize it correctly.
Yep. And he only probably knew about that 1031 because of the, the education the self-education that he had done to understand the tax law.
Yeah. So you have to ask yourself, after seeing this example, would you rather just do your normal thing with your W-2 job, work hard, pay the taxes on all that time that you've spent, and then the money that you attempt to grow from all of the hard work after the taxes, have taken what they are, you grow that and then you get taxed again? Or would you rather take time to develop your financial intelligence and be able to employ strategies just like this one right here? There's a quote that I like that was in the book. It says, often in the real world, it's not the smart that get ahead, but the bold. So Absolutely. If you want to get ahead in this world financially, not only do you have to develop your financial intelligence, you have to be able to recognize when those opportunities are at hand.
I totally agree. And, I think I discussed last week that something we really want people to get out of these episodes is how they can start to take small action themselves. We understand that, just through a couple podcasts, people aren't going to go out and all of a sudden buy, an investment property or something. But we want you to know the small little steps that you can start to take. Robert just says, starting to plant small seeds in your asset column. And we kind of talked about that already, but starting to save money, even if you don't know what investment or asset you want to invest in yet, and then finding creative ways to get into an asset. We're going to talk a lot about real estate because that's what we know best, but an example of that is in 2016 when Lindsay and I first started in real estate. Neither one of us had much money in savings. I think I had maybe $50,000 in an IRA, but that was it. But we started to listen to podcasts. We read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and we're like, how are we going to make this work? Well, Lindsay and I are both veterans. So we bought our first house with a VA home loan, which doesn't require you to put any money down, and you also don't have to pay mortgage insurance. So with that, Lindsay deployed. So I got 2 roommates to live with me. They helped pay the mortgage, if not all of the mortgage. And we repeated that process 4 times until all that money we were saving by not having to pay a full mortgage, we now had cash to go out and put a down payment onto something. So, that example obviously isn't going to work for everyone. Not everyone has the ability to use the VA home loan, but there's lots and lots of creative ways.
Absolutely. There's so many different creative ways out there that you can leverage money to make more money.
I like the quote that you have in there. It's not gambling if you know what you're doing. It's gambling if you just throw your money into a deal and pray. So,
right. And it ties back to developing your financial intelligence, right?
Absolutely. Yep. And something to really point out too, I feel like, maybe we've been giving a lot of positive examples and everything we've talked about has worked out. People do have to understand that by wanting to break out of the rat race, there is risk involved, but it's the more you're educating yourself, the less riskier it is if you're really understanding those assets. You're taking more
calculated risks,
absolutely,
right? As opposed to just, shooting in the dark, right?
Yeah.
And being able to be bold to take advantages of the things that you've learned and all that stuff. You hear all the time about how, for every successful business, that person has probably failed a dozen times or 5 times or whatever the average fail rate is, right? So as you get bolder, you get more creative and all that stuff, you will fail, right? One good example is Colonel Sanders.
Yes.
He went all over the country trying to pitch his chicken recipe, and I think he was turned down, I believe, 1,009 times before someone finally accepted his recipe, right? So you have to be able to fail to grow.
Absolutely.
And the way you approach failure is got to be different too, right? So we always you talk a lot about in real estate and probably all other aspects of life, right? You don't look at failure as a failure, look at it as a learning point, right? And then grow from there.
Yeah, if you don't ever try and fail, you'll never be successful. It's just part of it, but it's educating yourself as much as you can.
Failing is getting out of your comfort zone, right?
Yes, that's
to make those
exactly
mistakes.
Right. Yeah. And so to kind of get into the next chapter, which we've been talking about it a little bit already, but he really emphasizes working to learn, not working for money. And so basically what that means to me is obviously we still need to work for money. So those of us that are, still stuck in a W-2 job, obviously we need to continue to do that. But what can we do to educate ourselves while we're learning how to break out of the rat race? What else can we do with our time? Too many of us specialize and then we stop learning. He gives that example of the reporter in the book where he had suggested to her that maybe she take a sales class because she really wanted to be a well-known author just like him.
Yeah, she was a really, I wouldn't say renowned, obviously she wasn't famous, but everyone who read all of her novels agreed that they were very excellent novels, right? But she wanted to be, a bestseller like Robert Kiyosaki. And when he suggested to her that, she take a sales class, obviously he was trying to lean her towards marketing herself better, right? And she got offended by that because she was like, she had done all of this education on being this brilliant writer and stuff, but never got anywhere because she wasn't willing to step outside that specialization to go learn another skill. It's kind of easy to relate this to real estate too. So there's so many different facets of real estate. If you can specialize in just one little niche, right? But I'm constantly educating myself on all aspects of real estate, trying to broaden all of my possibilities, all of my horizons. So if you put your blinders on and you stay in that one spot, you're not, you're basically, stifling your ability to grow.
Yes. Yeah. So he's basically saying, don't always expect to get, for everything you do, you shouldn't always expect to get paid for it. There is a huge component of just working to learn a skill that can set you up for success in the future. He says most of us are one skill away from greatness.
Right. One skill away from greatness, because she was holding herself back by not looking into the possibility of educating herself in marketing. On that point, especially with our military examples, the military, I know in the Air Force, they really push you to broaden your horizons on everything. They want the whole person concept. So even if you're working in a corporation other than, a military organization, any other organization, a lot of times those CEOs and stuff, they want to see well-rounded people. They don't want to see one guy that goes in and just punches numbers all day long and that's all he can do. They want to see someone who's constantly trying to grow themselves, learn things that they're not necessarily in their lane, right? And that helps you out more than anyone probably could ever imagine. Just don't go do your job, go learn new things, broaden your skill set.
Yeah. And I can't remember if in the last episode we talked about the example of McDonald's, but Robert brings it up a few times in the book where, he at one time he asks, what is McDonald's known for or something? And the students he's teaching obviously say hamburgers.
They laugh at him, say, everybody knows you're in the hamburger business.
Yeah, that's what it is. But he said, no, they're actually in the business of real estate. And the key to McDonald's success is that we all know they don't make the best hamburger. I can make a much better hamburger at home. But they didn't just specialize in wanting to be the best at hamburger making. They understood that their market was really real estate and then learned about, the best places to put their real estate, and now they're the most successful business in the world.
Right. I thought it was really interesting, the point in the book too. They talked about, I think it was at the time, I think this was 25 years ago when the book was originally written. McDonald's at that point was the largest holder of real estate in the world, even larger than the Vatican.
The Vatican, yeah, that's right. That's interesting. So, just kind of, again, action steps that we can all take is, even if you have a full-time job, I understand a lot of us also have families, but trying to find those times that, maybe you're just sitting in front of the TV or you're scrolling on Instagram or all those time wasters. How could you take that time and instead start to educate yourself? Hopefully you're listening to this podcast. So that is your first step that you're taking and you're reading these books along with us, but just finding ways to really spend your time to continue to educate.
Yeah. I don't know if it's just where I am in life right now, but I've done obviously tons of self-study, reading all these books and all other stuff. But as I get older, it seems like I don't have enough time in the day to learn. Like I feel almost pressured that if I don't spend X amount of time, like I'm wasting time now, right?
Yeah.
So just spend enough time as you possibly can to try to grow yourself. The mind is just like your body, right? If you don't go to the gym and you don't lift weights or run or whatever it is, stay active, your body's going to start to deteriorate. Your mind is the same way. You should be looking to constantly grow, your intelligence and broadening your perspective on life.
And if you really evaluate your day, there's so many times where we have to do things. For example, driving to your job, maybe it takes 15 to 20 minutes. That's the perfect time to listen to a podcast. Whenever Lindsay and I are in the car together, we're always listening to something. Podcasts. Yeah. And I know that when you're out on your long hikes, you're always listening to a podcast or a book or something. There's so many times where we could multitask, when you're cooking, for example, listen to something that can help educate you rather than music.
Yep. I'll do that all the time. I'll have a YouTube playing, a podcast playing. If I'm in the gym on a treadmill, I got a book going, whatever. I just take advantage of whatever time I possibly can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, agreed. I think that kind of about sums up the 2 chapters. Was there anything that I'm missing that you wanted to add, Jamie?
No, just get out there and really push yourself. Get out there and get outside your comfort zone. It's not just us regurgitating the things that we hear in the book. It's one of the things that once you realize it's happening, and you're aware of it. It's a pretty exciting thing to do. So get out there, get outside your comfort zone, go grow yourself.
I love that. So that about wraps it up then for chapter 3. Now that we've had a episode 3, chapters 5 and 6. Now that we've had a couple episodes, I would really encourage you guys to leave us a rating and review if you can. It'll really help us grow. Be honest in your feedback, but please go and leave us a rating, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Yeah,
please give us some constructive feedback. We're trying our best to produce something that's valuable to other people. I think that's our our main goal in doing this, is not only growing ourselves, but helping other people grow. So if you have any feedback for us, please leave comments or, on YouTube or whatever. So I guess with that being said, go to our normal closings. If you are watching us on YouTube, please like, share, comment. If you have anything you would like to comment on or ask a question, if you haven't already, it's not too late to go out and grab a copy of Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And the way that our podcast is structured, you can go back and listen from one and catch up. And then hopefully everybody out there eventually is following along as we go down our podcast journey here for the next year and cover the rest of our books.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you tune in for our next episode, we will reveal the book of the month for February.
Absolutely. And next week, we will finish up with Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and we'll be talking about overcoming obstacles and how to get started on your journey to financial freedom. And like you said, we're going to reveal February's book.
Yeah, so very exciting.
Yeah, looking forward to seeing everybody next week.
Great.
All right.